So I am Julie Bolduc. I'm the Director of Career Operations and Student Employment with the Career Connection Center. My pronouns are she and hers, and I'm a first-generation student. And in college, I worked for this will date me, but I worked for the college newspaper as well as the magazine. And then right before my senior year at the University of New Hampshire, I got an internship with a book publishing company, and that really set my path for the first 20, 25 years of my career. But then a couple of years ago, I came to Clark. I pivoted my career. I wanted to just do something different. So I came to Clark, and I'm really happy to be here. And I will throw it over to Elizabeth to introduce herself.
Thank you. I am Elizabeth Gittens, and my title is Associate Director of Early Career Development. I use she, her pronouns. And at Ithaca College, my first job was in the cafeteria, where I was responsible for taking the plates off of the belt and putting them into something. I don't remember what that something was. And then I was able to get an internship at the Historical Society in Ithaca, New York, where I got to play in the archives all day and go through museum objects like ice skates and gowns and just all kinds of things. And my job was to research and label them.
Now we will go into telling your professional story. So we're here to talk about, are you getting the most out of the different sections of your resume? And we're going to go through all these 4 sections: education, skills, relevant experience, and whether and how to use an objective. And we're going to have a lot of before and afters so that hopefully you can really kind of get a sense of how to really strengthen what you have on your resume. So this is a sample of a really simplistic part of the education part of someone's resume, where you just list the date, university, and the fact that you're getting a degree. But what this is, it's a missed opportunity to connect your area of specialization to the needs of the employer, where you can list your major and minor to really help them get a sense of what your expertise is going to be or what you're trying to learn. And it shows a better picture of your complete experience if you add some detail to it. So here's an after demonstration where it shows the major and minor, the GPA, relevant coursework that you've taken, whether you studied abroad. These are all things that help the employer get to know you. And throughout this workshop, we'll really emphasize the fact that we have Career Lab staff to help you improve your resume. You can always make an appointment to talk through any of these things, because I imagine a lot of you might think, should I include this? Should I include that? So you can ask that here, but you can also make an appointment with our Career Lab staff to talk through all of these things.
So I wanted to talk about the difference between hard skills and soft skills. So I put a little visual up on the screen, and hard skills are those, it says teachable abilities or skill sets that are easy to quantify. So those are the things that you can prove. You can pull out that degree or certificate. You've taken a test that shows that you can speak a language to this ability or type this quickly. The soft skills are things that employers are also really looking for, but there isn't as easy a way to prove that. You can prove it, and I think you'll see that in some of the examples that we show later when we talk about relevant experience, that you'll start to see that some of the skills described say, okay, this person does have great communication skills, or this person is master time management. But when students just sort of list them without backing up why they think they have them, that's another missed opportunity. So on the next slide, this is typically what I see when I work with students, either that come to me for career counseling or resumes that are reviewed in the Career Lab. So many students will know that there's a skills section, and then what they'll do is they'll put the skills there all together. But in doing this, you notice that some of the skills that may be more important to employers are lost. And as you're revising your resume, because I look like a lot of you maybe have a resume according to the poll and it just needs some help, I really want you to think about tailoring your resume to the needs of the employer and start thinking about what are the things that they're asking for directly, what are the requirements, and what are the key words, the industry terms that you're using, and how can I put them into my resume. So here you've got communication skills, customer service, attention to detail, Spanish, social media. If you put yourself in the mindset of an employer, you might ask a question like, okay, well, how can we prove that? So I would recommend approaching the skills in a different way. And if you just go to the next one, Julie, the reason I would recommend it a different way is because you want that justification. You want to allow some things to stand out, and you want to show the degree to which you know certain things. So if we took this one, the after is going to look a lot more like this. This is separating the skills. So you have computer skills. Social media skills are very important these days. A lot of jobs are asking what type of skills students have in terms of social media. Languages are also important. Foreign languages are a huge asset, and certifications, if they're relevant, can also be helpful. I also put a link here. I know that when I was, whenever I'm making a resume, because we're constantly revising resumes, I sometimes overlook certain skills that I might have. So the first link is one to a bunch of skills that you might not even realize that you have that have to do with the computer and mail merging, all those types of things. Another link below that is when do you put that your language level is intermediate versus basic, advanced. Sometimes I'll see students sort of misjudging their language skills, and it's really important to try to be as specific and honest as possible with that. So that link will provide you with a description of where you might fall with second language skills, and then also some social media skills as well. And I also put a link there a note that on LinkedIn Learning, you can use LinkedIn Learning to sort of freshen up on some of these skills. So a lot of students might put, okay, I know, Microsoft, or I know Google Suite. An employer expects that you really know that in and out. So if you want to put that on your resume, I would recommend brushing up on that, maybe with a LinkedIn Learning course, to make sure that you really know what you're advertising.
And we wanted to share some examples too of how to really emphasize what you've learned in any kind of a job, whether or not you think it's going to be flashy or not. A lot of students come to college with babysitting, dog walking, things like that. A cashier job is a common position, and you might think, oh, well, it was really just ringing up groceries, but you're learning valuable skills in a job like that. So what you see here is a really basic rundown of a cashier position, but this description is very vague and predictable, and it's a missed opportunity to really kind of quantify your skills, talk about how deeply you learned what you did on the job. So here's a before, and then here's an after. And things that you want to keep in mind that you'll often see, especially if you are uploading your resume to Handshake and our Career Lab staff reviews it, is they'll always encourage you to try to quantify your experience. So balanced approximately $1,200 in a cash drawer, worked through approximately 70 customers a day. Things like that really speak to your experience. They really make it more real. You're quantifying what you've done. So what you see here, responded to customer needs. It's talking about skill sets, product information, locations, price verifications. All that shows that you knew your job deeply. And managed self-checkout using anti-theft protocols. It's talking about the training that you've done and that you practiced on the job, problem solving, all that kind of thing. It really paints a stronger picture. And here's another one that some students might have experience on an athletic team, and you don't really know what to say. Oh, I played on a team. But you can, again, think about, how do you quantify what you're doing? And if you are an athlete, you can really play up the fact that you are really good at time management. So the first bullet, committed approximately 30 hours per week to training, studying playbooks, travel, playing matches while simultaneously maintaining a full course load. because all of that is difficult. It's difficult to juggle many things in addition to coursework. It's always good to mention teamwork because that's a valuable skill set in any job. And something like leading tours of athletic facilities or any kind of aspect of your work that might show the fact that you can do public speaking or you're used to running tours. All of those things are really valuable things to highlight in a resume.
While we give people a chance to ask questions, Julie, I just wanted to add that in looking at this example, one of the things that stands out is that the active verbs at the beginning of each line, and just thinking about how in the difference between the before and after that you showed, those active verbs, when somebody's skimming your resume, they're sort of looking at the left side and going down and looking for those active verbs that match the skills that they are looking for in a potential employee. And one of the things that I'll when we send you the PowerPoint, I'll include a link to a list of active verbs that we have, because students have found it helpful sometimes when thinking about, okay, well, what did I really do at this job? I'm not really sure. The active verbs are organized by teaching, management, some different categories, which will help you generate more skills that you have. And that's just a way to get out of a spot where sometimes students get stuck when they're trying to think, okay, what did I do as a waitress? Or what did I do as a dog walker? So we'll send you that link so you can access that.
Elizabeth, do you want to talk about objectives?
I sure do. So the objective, you know what I should have done is put an example of where you typically see this objective, and that's right at the top of the resume. So a lot of students will use a template and they'll try to squeeze the information that they have into the template format. A lot of templates have an objective that goes right at the top of the resume, but if you do not have a specific need for an objective, you don't necessarily need to use one. So I want you to think about why you would be using one. A reason to not use an objective is because you just want it to take up space and you're hoping if you make the font big enough, and make space between the lines, that maybe you can take up a third of the resume, but that's not going to help you at all. Some students also use it to ask for a job. But that's not what the resume is for. You should use your objective when you are new to the job search and you want to be specific about what it is that you are looking for, so that employers have a better sense of who you are. So here is a typical objective that I see, to find summer employment so I can pay tuition as I work towards becoming a teacher. Definitely that's what you want out of finding a job, but I encourage you to think about what the employer wants. So this is vague. It focuses on the job seeker's needs, not the employer's needs. It's also a missed opportunity to talk about value. At any point you want to show what value you bring to a position. So in the after, this is an example of an after, and you can see I forgot to write down the fourth one here. I was trying to make some questions, but I like this example because it broke it down into 1, 2, 3, 4. What parts should you have in your objective? You should be specific about what you hope to be with that position, and of course you're tailoring it to a specific position. Your objective is more about what you would like to do to help. So looking for a position at a small independent school. That's just helping the employer to think, okay, well, that's what we are. We're a good match. We're on the right track. This is working. You can then talk about your experience or skills that you have and what you bring to the table. So if you can write a nice, a well-written objective that helps the employer understand why you're looking for this specific position, I would recommend the objective. If you need help writing an objective, the Career Lab or any of your career advisors are happy to help you with that.
Do you want to take this to this too, Elizabeth?
Yeah, so we were just, so this transitioning to the next section is really just about, there are so many times when I think maybe both Julie and I have met with students, and through talking to them, we found out a lot of things about them that are amazing. And then we look back at their resume and we think, okay, well, why isn't this on your resume? And a lot of students have answers like, I didn't know it was important, or I didn't think that an employer would want to know this. So we've created a list of things that you might be forgetting that you want to think about including on your resume. So the first one is if you are feel that you don't have a lot of work experience, or maybe you've only had one job or no paid job. Think about what you do in your spare time. These the things that you do in your spare time can be used under a section called relevant experience to help the employer show that you do have skills. So think about, where have you been involved with on or off campus clubs or organizations? Have you done volunteer work through church, especially if it's long term? That's a great thing to put on your resume. Or do you have any unofficial jobs, or anything that maybe you weren't hired through a company for, but it still requires all of those skills that you're trying to prove that you have, such as babysitting or dog walking or any other relevant experience? Do you want to do that one?
Sure. So we also wanted you to think about what tangible evidence do you have of your commitment and skills? Do you have certifications for any kind of job that you had? Maybe you had a safety training if you were working with food in the past year or something like that. Do you have any professional memberships and affiliations? Those are things that really help, again, paint the picture of who you are as a candidate. And in the PowerPoint, we've linked discover what professional organizations you can join using the link, what can I do with this major? And that will help kind of spur you perhaps to, different avenues that you didn't think of before.
And I want to note too, the professional organizations will also lead you to job boards where you can search for jobs and internships as well. So I know there are usually student discounts that you can get as a college student for joining certain professional organizations. So it's worth looking into. Also think about where you are a leader. So that could be in a club, religious organization. I know we don't really have Greek life, not that I know of, on campus, but all of those count because they require time management and planning and organization and all kinds of skills. Also, as you saw in the example before, any experience on an athletic team or club is a great way to show time management. And then also think about accomplishments that you may be overlooking. So I've seen students who have really amazing blogs, or who've published some things on Medium or other outlets. And that may be, depending on what you're applying to, worth putting on your resume. Definitely go back, think about any honors or awards that you've received, scholarships are worth putting on your resume. You may have also been involved with a really big project in a class. Maybe you had something that lasted a couple months. And even though it was part of a class and you didn't get paid for it, it wasn't called as an internship specifically, you may have had such a big role in it that it's worth sharing on your resume. And then, of course, if you've presented at a conference on or off campus, that's something that you could also put either under relevant experience or leadership, depending on what you're applying to.
And the next slide, what do you take for granted about yourself that an employer might see as a valuable asset? So foreign languages spoken, any kind of skill that you have, it's worth putting on the resume, especially when you think about what the specific job might entail. Is it looking for someone who can learn quickly? Think about all of your experiences that way. And are you showing the complete scope of what you have done previously? If you worked at a restaurant, you started off as a hostess, that's a particular skill set. But then if you get promoted to server, that's another skill set. So you can list those things separately.
Another question to ask is, what aspects of your background have prepared you for the position that you are applying for? So relevant coursework is important. It can be within, or it can be even outside of your major. The example that we showed in the beginning about education shows how you can list that. Research experience with professors is relevant, as is your GPA. We recommend that it be 3.0 or above if you're going to list it on your resume. There may be events that you participated in. So I know I was speaking with a student last week who had participated in Playfest, and that became a section on their resume. Any relevant conferences, again, workshops that are attended show that you are seeking professional development, that you're engaged and you are interested in the field that you're going into. And then if there are rigorous projects that you participated in as well.
So here are some extra tips. Don't just throw everything in there. One of our pre-workshop questions was a great one of asking, should I have different versions of my resume? And that's absolutely encouraged, because you want to tailor your resume for the job that you're applying for. So resume isn't a place where you dump everything you've ever done onto one page. You really want to think about, what is this employer looking for? What kind of skills are going to be important? And you punch up certain experiences more than others. If it's unfocused and there's too much in there, it's overwhelming. Some people might think, oh, if there's a lot on one page, it's going to look like I've got a lot going on, but really it's too much. It's overwhelming. It has to kind of pass what is, Elizabeth, the 10 to 15 second test where someone's looking at it. And if they're overwhelmed, it's just too much. So you really want to tailor it. Who is the resume for? Who is your audience? What do they want or need? And what language did they use? Because that is related also, less so if you're applying for an on-campus position, but if you're applying for an internship or a job, it's really important to think about the keywords that are in the job description and kind of match your resume to that. There was another pre-workshop question about, how dressed up should my resume be? Should I have a lot of design elements going on? And the answer is no. The simpler, the better. You shouldn't have any tables or anything like that, because applicant tracking systems will get thrown off by any kind of funky formatting. So keep it simple, keep it clean, keep it visually attractive by making sure all the bullets are aligned and everything's bold that should be bold and not bold if the style doesn't call for that. So if you have any other questions on that, you can email us or ask the Career Lab as well.
And you make a good point, Julie, about the applicant tracking systems. And the staff at the Career Lab can help students with that as well. They can make an appointment with you and then sit down and look for how readable that might be in the current resume that you have and help you make changes. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Right, because what the hiring manager sees on the other side, especially at larger companies, is they'll have a position, they'll open it up in whatever HR platform they have, and they'll see a lot of candidates with keyword matches. This candidate is a 60% match for this job. This candidate is 30%. And the hiring manager is going to focus on those higher keyword matches. So that's why that kind of thing is really important.
I see we have a hand raised, Cassandra.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so I only have one resume and I posted that on my Handshake. And I realized that a lot of what you guys are saying, I really focused on answering those questions within my cover letter. And I feel like, is that not really an ideal thing to do? Or is it more efficient to have various resumes to line up with that cover letter?
That's a great question. Do you want me to throw in what I think and then you can add to it, Julie?
Sure.
Okay. So the question, I think I hear sort of a couple different questions. One is, do I need different versions of my resume? Is that correct? Yes?
Yeah, because I feel like I made a lot of different cover letters for different job applications.
It can be overwhelming, and to know you need to tailor everything. I would tailor each resume and cover letter to each job, which can be overwhelming just to think about. So what I recommend is usually starting with one really good one, and then you can tweak it a little bit. So once you've got one that you really feel comfortable with, as long as you're applying within the same industry or for similar positions, then you're not making too much of a change. It's when you are applying to, if you've got so many skills that you could apply to jobs in 3 different areas, then you're doing a little bit more tailoring. But the difference between the cover letter and the resume is that the cover letter is not just in a different format. It's a chance for you to tell a story about yourself that could not be told through the resume. So there's a lot of work to do there. And again, Career Lab, Career Advisor is happy to do that. I love actually working on cover letters with students, because it's a chance for them to tell the employer something about themselves that will stand out, that will stick with the hiring manager at the end of the day, that they couldn't tell just by looking at the positions that they've held. Do you want to add on to that, Julie, or did I answer your question? Or did I just want to talk about cover letters? Because
yeah, I think you covered it well. We have another question, which is about not having a ton of job experience because their family moves around a lot. So it's hard to have a job or internship experience, and how to display that. So for that, I would say, maybe that's something that you could talk about in your cover letter, but really think about all the things that we talked about in this workshop. Were you a member of an organization or a club? Did you do a presentation? Something like that. And this, something else you can think of is, did you have a side hustle? Did you make masks during the pandemic? Or did you make jewelry for friends or something along those lines? Did you do any crafts, photography? Anything with a side hustle, again, shows initiative, shows creativity. It shows bravery, trying to put yourself out there. So you can think about those types of things, but also if you ever want to talk about it one-on-one, you can make an appointment with us too, where we can kind of talk about those experiences and flesh them out. Elizabeth, do you want to put in 2 cents?
Yeah, just as I'm hearing you speak, I'm just thinking about I think students would be surprised to know how many other students make an appointment with me or other career advisors, and they say that they don't have anything, and they feel sort of that maybe they're lacking or there's something wrong. I definitely didn't have, in high school, my focus was on getting into college. I didn't have a job. So I didn't have any experience that I could put on my resume, and it felt like I was the only person who'd never had a job. But I can tell students from my end that's very common, especially first-year students who are entering college. The resume is more about trying to tell the big picture story through everything. It's not just a list of experiences, not just a list of jobs in a competition to see who's had the most.
Mm-hmm. And you can think too, was there something in school that you volunteered for? After a play, were you always volunteering to help break down the set? Or, if you did have a job and they needed to move offices, were you the one that helped organize it? Kind of think of those types of things that you might be able to mention. And you're definitely not alone. That's part of the reason why we wanted to do this workshop, is that we definitely realized that, especially this year, it's hard to get any job experience because of the way things are. So trying to get you to think about all those different alternative experiences, projects, basically anytime you raise your hand for something is worth fleshing out.
Mm-hmm.
And just to look at the other kind of pre-workshop questions, there was a question about a legal first name when it's different from your preferred first name. And a resume is not a legal document, so you can feel free to use your preferred name only on the resume, or you could do something like, if my preferred name was James, I could write, James Bolduc, or put James in quotation marks or something like that. But again, a resume is not a legal document, so using the preferred name is fine. But anything that is a legal document, like if you're filling something out for an employer about a background check, anything with Social Security, payroll, you should put your legal name for that. Someone asked about good action verbs, and we'll provide a link in there that, as Elizabeth mentioned earlier. Are there any other questions? We love questions, so feel free to put them in the chat or
Eduardo.
Unmute.
Hello.
So it goes back. I don't know how specific this question gets. I don't know if you guys can hear me.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because I'm having trouble. Like on my end, it looks like my internet's not working.
Oh.
But alongside that question of like the 2 resumes, like while I look at like my experience and my history, I feel like I can make 2 resumes. One, I feel like now if like let's say I apply to a position at Clark, like a job position, I feel like it isn't really that relevant for me to put like my retail experience, because I feel like it doesn't align as much compared to the experience that I'm now gaining at Clark. For example, I can make a, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can make a like quote unquote retail resume that includes like my experience working at McDonald's, Little Caesars. I have commission and sales, like resume, like have a resume tailored for that. And then I have another resume because that talks about me being, like, I was a PLA my first year. I was doing research with a professor. I did a project including the census my sophomore year. And like looking at that, it's like I feel like I had all those things in one resume, so it didn't really like sell me. Like I feel like, again, like you guys had said, it would overwhelm employers, and like I feel like I was too all over the place.
Can I speak to that a little bit, Julie? Do you have-
Mhm.
So I think that the transferable skills that you would have learned from your retail job or any other job like that, if they're relevant to a position, I still think that they're worth putting on there. But the shift is going to be that you need to now do the work of thinking, okay, what are the skills they want to see? So, for example, one of my jobs right after college was I was a waitress, and that was my job, and I was then applying to teaching positions. Waitressing and teaching don't seem like similar things, but I learned more about teaching from waitressing than some of my school related positions, because you're managing lots of people. And retail, same thing. I used to work at the Gap, which is closing now. I'm very old,
Mhm.
but all those skills I used on the floor and in sales, those were things that I was able to show the employer were relevant to the job that I was doing. So Eduardo, I think that if you look at the skills that they're requiring on new positions that you're applying to, and if you're able to identify skills from retail that you have because of that position, you might be able to merge it and make the argument that it still belongs on there. If you don't feel that it belongs on there and you feel like you have enough, then I would say you might consider taking it off. But it is usually when you do that revision work and think about what you did differently, with through the lens of a future employer, you might be able to make those changes. If that makes sense.
My question was more or less, when do you need a cover letter? Because I've never had to apply to any of my jobs with one, but I know I should think about writing one.
Mhm. I would encourage you to write a cover letter for any job that you apply to, because it shows that you're willing to put in the extra effort to stand out. For as far as on any on-campus jobs, you'll see what's required when you see the job position, whether they want a resume, cover letter. Sometimes the hiring managers would like to see a transcript or a sample of computer code or something like that. So I would say write a cover letter every time, because it's your chance to make a really good impression. Elizabeth, do you want to chime in too?
No, I definitely agree with that. And we can also add a link to our resources page, which has a cover letter guide if you've never written one before, which is pretty helpful too.
Yeah, I know this workshop is more about like creating your resume and telling your story through there. I was wondering more so about interviews, and especially being within a pandemic right now, and I'm currently unemployed, and I was wondering what I could say to employers within an interview to make myself seem more promising, even though I've been unemployed for a very long time because of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, realize you're not alone. And I was just glancing to see what year you are, because we actually are having a Life After Clark conference, but it's geared mostly toward juniors and seniors. But I will say, as far as interviewing, again, your chance to make a good impression is to check your email really quickly, so that if they ask you for an interview, you can impress them by responding right away. And then also show your preparedness in the interview. I can actually send you a few pointers for interviewing, but it's a really good idea to have some stories about when you went above and beyond. So we call it the STAR method: situation, task, action, result. So what situation were you in? What did you realize you needed to do? And how did you implement that? And before I came to Clark, I had, interviewed a few places. I'd applied to a lot. And what I did was I had a running Word document of a lot of what we call behavioral interview questions, which are really popular. Describe a time when you had a conflict with a coworker, or describe a time when you couldn't meet a deadline, and get used to telling those stories. So literally, say them out loud in your room, to just get used to verbalizing those stories so that you appear more comfortable. It's okay to be imperfect. You don't have to be perfect in those things, but I would encourage you to start documenting all of your STAR stories so that you can be prepared to tell those stories in an interview, and always demonstrate your willingness to learn. When in my last job, I interviewed a lot of people, and I would say, how do you learn technology? And you'd be surprised by some of the answers. I literally had a candidate tell me, well, I always would just ask someone else how to do it. Not the best answer. The better answer is, I looked it up on YouTube, or I learned it on LinkedIn, or, I'm better at reading manuals and then doing things. So always kind of demonstrate your willingness to learn, and that goes a long way. Elizabeth, do you want to?
No, I'm just saying, I don't think I can show how much I think storytelling through your cover letter, through your interview, how much of an impact that makes. If we think about how storytelling is just, a part of our culture, and just continues culture, it's just at the end of the day, that's how you make the impact. And so even if you don't have a lot of experience, if you can tell a great story about the experience that you do have, that I think speaks volumes.
We also do mock interviews. You can make an appointment with to do a mock interview, and run it through one-on-one with any of us at the Career Center as well.
Yeah, those are fun. We have a great question too about basically if you had an experience or something that, like an internship that you were supposed to do or were accepted to, but then COVID hit and you weren't able to do it, should you include that in your resume? The answer is we say yes, you should include it as long as you make it clear that it was rescinded because of COVID. And I'm just taking some notes too of things that we can send to everybody. I can send an example of the wording of what that would look like, but basically you set it up just like the experience, but without the bullet points, because you didn't get to actually do those things. And then you write something like rescinded due to COVID, so that people know that you were offered that but didn't get to do it. The reason behind the thought process behind including it is that you went through the whole process, you were chosen above others, you showed that you were competitive in nature, and that's something worth sharing.
It looks like we have another hand up. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Feel free to correct me, Anel.
Anael, yeah.
Anael, thank you.
On a similar note, I had an internship that I had, and I did participate in it, but I didn't get to complete it. So is that something that I should also note in that, or just list out the things and skills that I've learned, that I was able to learn in the time that I was able to do it?
Are you saying you weren't able to complete it, like it ended in June and you had to finish in April or something?
Yeah.
Like that? Then correct me if you think otherwise, Julie, but my instinct is yes, that you would put that on there. I don't think the employer necessarily know when it was supposed to end or what was the expectation. But if you were there and you learned skills, then I would say definitely put that on your resume.
Okay.
Any last thoughts, Elizabeth?
No, I just want to thank everyone for coming and asking some great questions, and know that we are here and eager to help you with all the steps from searching for positions to revising your resume, cover letter, interviewing, and beyond.
Hey, it's Amina here. I just want to thank both of you on behalf of MFGSS for hosting this workshop. And for those of you who came, thank you for coming. If you are here for your ACE requirement, I also just want to remind you that you do not have to write a reflection for this workshop, as it is an MFGSS workshop.
All right, great. Thanks, everybody, and take care.